Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here. In the coming months, I'm planning on doing a Final Fantasy XI event where myself and any other volunteers who are able, please join, will assist new or returning players with working through Final Fantasy XI's story. This will be welcome to Final Fantasy XIV players just looking for some encouragement to actually play through it before Echoes of Vana'diel, the new Alliance raid, comes out, or returning Final Fantasy XI players who never treated themselves to some of the more recent stories like Seekers of Adolin and Rhapsodies of Vana'diel, which is the game's main swan song, even though they've released another story, The Voracious Resurgence, since then. While I'll have a bunch of resources available to help players through on top of being present in game, I figured some video resources might help as well. And above all else, many have requested I do a video on installing the game. Okay, I know that sounds like a joke, but if you've never played Final Fantasy XI, trust me, this is more necessary than it might seem. It has a notoriously annoying registration and installation experience. This video request was all over my Twitter, so I went ahead and bought a new copy of the game and did it on a brand new account. Fortunately, they've streamlined some of it, but it's still something. So let's get started. First off, there are two places to buy the game. One is directly from the Square Enix store, and the other is from Steam. Honestly, there isn't that much of a difference, but the install process for the non-Steam version does reduce the initial update time. There's also a few finicky things for the Steam version that you'll have to work around, but I'll get into that in a few minutes. For the version of the game that you're buying, it's the Ultimate Collection Seekers Edition, which just includes all of the expansions. There's a few stories after Seekers, but they're just free, so you don't need to buy those. Now, once you buy the game, you're going to get 3 codes. 2 of them are for optional items, and 1 is the actual registration code for the game. With this, we can begin the process. Now head to the Square Enix account management site and log in as normal. You'll find the Play Online/Final Fantasy XI option really easily, but this is where things get confusing. Now you have 2 options here, add a service account and add new Play Online service account. The first option allows you to add additional service accounts after the first one and register those bonus items you got earlier. But before we can do that, we need to go to the other option, add new Play Online service account, and actually register the code you got from your purchase. You'll get some license agreements and confirmations of what the code gives you access to before coming to a screen like this. So with your registration complete, you'll have a Play Online ID, a default password, and even a mail address and password that you will absolutely never use. You 100% need the ID and password here. So screen cap this and save it in Paint or write it down or however you want. Just make sure you have this information before you leave this page. Now, next you'll be taken to the options menu. Now, options include character slots and mod wardrobes, which are basically bonus inventory for your gear. Take the only lit up option at the top and add a character to the service account. You'll be asked for payment information, so use debit, credit, or Krista here. Keep in mind you do get a 30-day free trial before any charge is actually incurred. Speaking of charges, you're probably wondering why a character is an option. Well, Final Fantasy XI actually has a base monthly cost of $11.95 USD, and then each character slot costs $1 USD on top of that, including your very first character slot. So you are paying $12.95 USD a month minimum. When you get to this screen, you'll be presented with the character slot options and their added costs, so grab the one slot and continue onward. You'll see the total cost reduced to 0 for that free trial period, and finally, add the option to finish setting up here. Now, for the game download. I suppose it's worth mentioning that Final Fantasy XI does actually have a normal free trial, because I just called that the free trial period. Do not use the 14-day free trial. It makes this upgrade process infinitely worse. So just buy the game if you're going to play it. Trust me. Anyway, back on track. If you're playing the Steam version, just do the initial download and then follow my instructions when I get back to talking about it. But for Windows, there's a mildly stranger install process that directly installs more files, which will reduce the post-install update time. It's basically a 5-part download and an executable, but follow the instructions on this page, which I'll link in the description, and you should be fine. I mean, it does it step by step, so what could go wrong? Okay, now one more thing before we start to actually configure the game. Final Fantasy XI is old. 21 years old, as a matter of fact. It was also made for the PlayStation 2 and not for PC. So it really doesn't work that well with modern computers, and so there's one thing you're going to want to turn on to actually make it, well, work. It's something called the Legacy Component Direct Play. Open your Windows control panel, select Programs and Features, then select Turn Windows Features on or off on the top left. Scroll down to Legacy Components and enable Direct Play. This should, in most cases, prevent the game from instantly crashing when you boot it up. Now for configuration, you'll notice you're given 3 separate options when you launch the game. 2 of them are configurations and 1 of them is the actual client. If you're playing on Windows, be sure to launch this in admin mode and the game as well. Otherwise, you may have issues using a controller. Now, if you're playing on Steam, you actually want to do the same thing, but you can't really do that if you launch it right from the Steam list in the client. So you're actually going to need to go into your Steam folders and find the executables to launch them in admin mode instead. For the Play Online config, go to the Play Online folder, find the POLCFG folder, and launch the executable that's in there in admin. For Final Fantasy XI configuration, go to the Final Fantasy XI folder and scroll down to the Tools US folder. I'm not sure if foreign keyboards or other peripherals designed for specific countries use Tools EU, so keep that in mind as well if you have any issues later. Now, once there, you can launch the Final Fantasy XI configuration in admin. Also, pretty much any of the POL boot executables or just POL executables can be launched in administrator mode here as well, and that is actually how you'll launch the game. I highly recommend just making shortcuts for all this stuff. Now in the Play Online configuration, I recommend turning on pretty much all the options. Start in windowed mode, enable sound, and enable the gamepad. Gamepad and windowed mode are most important as they make navigation much simpler, or in the case of the gamepad, at all possible if you're using a controller. Oh, and as you can see, there is gamepad configuration, but that gamepad configuration is only for the actual Play Online viewer and has no effect on the game itself. You should still probably configure it just for navigating Play Online, make sure all the buttons are correct, but you're going to have to do it again anyway. For the Final Fantasy XI configuration, you 100% must play in windowed or borderless full screen. If you leave Final Fantasy XI in full screen, then every single time you tab out of the game, it will disconnect you back to the Play Online viewer. And trust me, you're going to need to tab out. Any other settings such as gamepad configuration are up to you. If gamepad configuration won't detect your controller, again, be sure you launch this configuration in admin mode. Also, if you have multiple controllers or devices your PC registers as controllers, such as a special keypad or whatnot, it may run into issues as well. You'll either have to unplug or disable the ones you're not using. Okay, now we can launch Play Online, again, in admin mode. On this screen, you'll see a lot of options, but the only one you really need is Add Member. Here, you're going to be given a bunch of options. Your member name is just an arbitrary name for the login. You can make it whatever you want. It's really just there in case you share this Play Online client with multiple other people. The Play Online ID and password are where you'll put the information you were given when we registered your game to your account. You can set and forget these at this point, but you should probably hold on to them in case you ever need to reinstall or forget them or whatever. Member password here is also only if you share Play Online with other people, so you can just leave this empty. Then you have your Square Enix ID and one-time password setup. This is the same ID you would use to log into the Square Enix account management page, or even just your Final Fantasy XIV login. If you have a one-time password, which, let's be honest, it's 2023, you should have a one-time password. I also highly recommend it as it gives you a bonus inventory called a Mog Satchel in Final Fantasy XI that matches your current inventory size. It's quite useful. Enable that here too. This will create a member profile for you to access like so. Simply click it, put in your Square Enix password and one-time password, and log in. From this point on, it's fairly streamlined. They'll ask you to do a couple of things if it's your first time launching Play Online, but nothing difficult. Oh, I almost forgot something very important. When you first log into Play Online and you're on this initial screen, go to Options and turn off automatic disconnection. I think it's set to 20 minutes by default, or at least it was several years ago when I did the initial install process. And you want to turn that off because that will disconnect you during the update process, and you do not want that to happen because it makes the process take much longer than you'd expect an automatic disconnect to do. Navigate to Final Fantasy XI and click the play button to update the game itself and get started. If you're on the Steam version, this update phase is going to take a while longer, usually a few hours minimum, even on good internet. That's because Play Online actually throttles your update speed. It's better than it was when I was growing up at least, but when I grew up I played this on dial-up, so not a great comparison. And there you go, you have now installed Final Fantasy XI. I just have to remember to launch in admin mode every time, and I know there's something some of you are considering when I talked about this entire install process. There's a certain thing that helps, And it's very common amongst Final Fantasy XI players, but perhaps we should talk about that in either a separate video or potentially just in Discord or once you log into the game, because it's a whole other consideration and configuration that you have to consider. But that's going to be a wrap for my first of my helper videos. The next one I do will talk about character creation and some early tips, as well as point you to some resources that will be incredibly useful. I don't have a date for the event yet, but when I do, I will make a formal video announcing it, going over details in Discord, asking for volunteers, etc., etc. Looks like I might be starting it sooner rather than later, though, but bear in mind there is likely going to be a sale on the game, probably around December 11th, if I had to guess. But at this point, I'm just guessing because it's based on pattern. So maybe it will, maybe it won't. Either way, I'm expecting over the holiday season we'll get started on this and then probably have to continue it in full speed in March after all of us get through Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Persona, what else is there? Like a Dragon, all that stuff that's in like late January / all the way through February. So those are just some of the tentative plans for the time being. Anyway, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and best of luck installing Final Fantasy XI. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one. And until then, take care.